Hello there. I decided to try something new out for our Patreon for you guys. I'm going to do a video process going through what I did for my Drunk LyDia piece. It's been over a month since I've done that, so bear with me as I'm trying to reorient myself with how my layers have been organized. But yeah, so let's start out. I have a sketch here, just the general posing. I like to color code things when I sketch, so red is just the basic shapes, and then green I would go for like details like clothing and hair, and blue as a third color for either of those, and I may use other colors for other things like face. It really depends on the piece and what I'm feeling like. So yeah, so that's how it turns out, what it starts with. So let's hide that, and then we got the line art, the full line art version. I actually was careful about preparing this in advance, so it's convenient to have these folders on the side. So yeah, that's the line art. I may do a tutorial about line art, but it's a bit of its own process involving the G pen, vector layers, and vector erasers, which makes it actually quite easy, just time consuming. But I'll get more into that later probably. Yeah, so let's start out. I'll just go to the actual line art layer. I usually keep a folder for all my line arts. So I guess, wait. Oh, that's right. That folder needs to be shown. So there's the full colored version, including the lines. Bit straightforward. It's actually coloring it with the flats is quite easy too, because I just use a fill tool and a bit of selection. But also, again, I may get into that another time. It's quite easy once you know the software, which I'm using Manga Studio 5. Not Clip Studio, Manga Studio 5. Anyways, so let's go step by step. I like to color my layers lately. It's giving me indication on what does what. So for this one, orange layers just mean like the flat colors, which are all visible right now. So yeah, there's the face, the pupils, the skin, etc. So yeah, I'll go into these step by step. So just a general pink or reddish shadings on the skin here. And like the whole process of actually doing it is more lengthy and to explain than just showing you, but here's what it looks like when I've shaded them. And with this one I actually added a bit of a darker shade underneath the bangs, and then this green layers for the highlights. I've color coded yellow to be more of a shading and green to be highlighting as well. This one I made her shoulders and cheeks more shiny, so that's always cool. So that all I'm showing is just the skin layers. So now we're on the face layer seams, and that's just for the eyes and mouth. So there's that. For the pupils, oh yeah, that's how I did it this time. My pupils tend to be kind of different each time too. How I show them, what kind of shininess they are. It's kind of a nice little experiment. Second shade just for a darker tint over the top of the eye, something I tend to do. And then the highlights, I made kind of a yellowish highlight because, which you'll see soon, the background's kind of got more of a yellowish tint. Alright, so the shirt. And I'll go back to full size again. There's that. Bit of a combination of soft and hard shading this time. I'm trying to practice that more often. And then a darker bit for some more darker parts. The next one, shirt puff, I just named that. Sometimes I just make up weird names for things just so I know what they are. So the shirt puff is just this thing. And I seem to have just only had one shading layer for that, so there's that. I probably would have made it more of a floofy outline if I had that in mind, but sometimes I just make things up as I go. Decor layers involve, as you can see, the purple, whatever is replacing her scarf in this picture is just some kind of neck necklace thing that wraps around the neck, as well as her hairband things that always are there. So that's it for clothes. So I'll close that layer, folder. So now for the hair. Now this one was interesting because this was like a new experiment for me, and actually this was what I did first before anything else. I started with making the highlights first. I usually do highlights after the shading, but this time I'm trying a different kind of process with the shading. It's kind of working out now. But here it is. As you can see, it's kind of it's all solid highlighting, and goes right across the bangs, and there's a bit of highlight on the edge on the outside. And then I duplicated it because I wanted to keep this, and I kind of blurred kind of, so you see it like that. And yeah, the blend blur tool, I don't remember which one of the two, but it honestly doesn't matter to me because they kind of both serve their purpose. So there's that. That's why this highlight layer here is not color coded, because I'm not using it, although if I combined it you can have somewhat of a glow. But yeah. And then the shading, which actually I think I determined the shading, the lighting, based on the background too, but the background itself is kind of all around lighting, so it was kind of up to me. Something I'm also practicing. The other thing is with the shading is, here's what I tried to do is I put more shading on the bottom part of the highlight, because what I'm finding is that things that have highlights, like the brightest parts of hair or anything really that's kind of shiny, is right next to the darkest parts. It's kind of an interesting observation and technique, but it works well for me and works well for any others who've discovered this important info. Alright, so next for hair, and the same deal basically. Highlights. I didn't preserve the solid ones for the hair strands because they don't need to be needed. Yeah, so that goes for the hair. And then butterfly, the buttfly as I named it. This one I was looking around for references, and I kind of came up with this idea of a gold plating with some pearls in the design. So there's a combination of the gold and pearl shadings. So it's kind of like, I mean, if you look at pearls and gold, it's got some dark spots in it, and then of course the bright spots right next to some of those dark spots, and you know, pearls have a bit of weird shiny specks to it too. So that's what I got. Yeah, so there's my line art, my main line art, which tends to be most of the lines. And then I usually have a separate one for the face, because if I want to fill in the entire head for the skin, I don't want to have to deal with all these eyebrows and eyes getting in the way. And there's a separate one for the butterfly, because I decided to put that on top after I did the lines for the hair already. And then, like, as a last minute thing, I also put milk in, which is down at the bottom. There's my signature as well, which is also its own line art type of layer, and there's the shading for that. Of course, all this shading is also being determined by the background too, which I'll have to show you right now. So the inspiration was this, but I'm not gonna use a stock photo. I'm gonna make my own. So I made this. I'm gonna hide LyDia for a moment, as you can see the full beauty of it. So this was a bit of its own process to do. Actually I'll go through it, because why not? Okay, so yeah, just basic straight colored lines. There's some gradients, some dark spots, and then some kind of like, I'm sort of half referencing the stock photo too. So like there's some orange haze and some little blur specks and whatnot. So sort of half copying, eye copying, not tracing or anything. And then I made the bottles. They're all just of my own design, using reference photos of various alcohols Just made various shapes, used the same similar colors. I actually I dropped a bunch of colors beforehand too. So red, this tan, this gold, these blues, and I just made my own shapes and used the symmetry ruler for that, which you can find right here. It's very handy if you want to get symmetrical stuff. So I just like and it'll create the other half. The other thing what I used was the lasso fill, which it's a combination of a lasso selection, and it'll fill it immediately once you're done making the selection. So that's very handy. And then yeah, shading, and I'm sort of like also taking from the shading of the bottles, and then the highlights, and then some speck. Like with this photo, you see little bits of blurred out specks of light reflecting, but that's just a cheat way for me to do. Also, the bottom bottles here are just a flipped version of these 4 bottles up here, just to put some in the corner there, just like that one. So it's not as detailed as the reference photo, but it does the job. And then oops, and that's where and then I just blurred the shit out of it because it's in the background. Doesn't really matter too much. It works well when it's really blurred out. So yeah, bring back LyDia. Now, the fun part about this is connecting the background with the character, because you know they are very independent looking. The lighting is quite different between the two. So this is where my fun expertise gets in with compositing. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So I've labeled the lighting details, the finishing touches, so to say. I labeled those layers as blue. First, forgot to put the eye highlights too. The eye highlights I put on top of the line art layer because sometimes they go above the line, as you can see there. Then I'm automatically zooming in too. That's just perfect. So there, as you can see there, and that counts as green because it's highlights. So then I put a tint. What it normally is just, I think I took a selection from the entire character of LyDia. So you can just right click, selection from layer, create a selection, and that will select all of LyDia, or all of the character that you're trying to select. And I just filled in with this color. Just a general, I use a kind of general color, reddish orangish tint from what the background is giving. I fill it in, and then I put it on, I believe it was color burn. Yeah, there it is, color burn. And then I just reduced it, and I also erased parts of it that seemed like it was too burny, too much of it. It was kind of like a customized way of tinting it. So before and after, it gives it a bit more integration with the background. And then I like to do this little thing called light wrap, which doesn't look like much, but it kind of sells it more. It just takes parts of the background and wraps around the character, as you can see, your light wrap. In most cases, when you think about light wrap, you're thinking about a person who's standing in front of a light, and the light is just like sort of bleeding over to the edges. It's the same concept, but the thing is about light wrap is that everything has light wrap on it, even if it's just a small amount. Because everything reflects light, unless it's completely black and darkness. So it's subtle, 37% on screen, does the job. I basically just take the background, take a selection, take a copy of the background, put it above the character, take a selection of the character, and then sort of reduce the selection so it's more the inner edge and just sort of only taking only the edge of the character, blurring it, and then removing all around the outside, so all you see is just what's on the edge. I could do a tutorial on that more in depth, but for now. And then extra lighting, so just make it all more shiny. Give it even more integration, because things are casting light onto her, and it just, yeah, makes her more lit up, more lit. This was like, this is this is not usually my part of my progress with when it comes to finishing touches. Like light wrap and tint is usually the first two main ones I go for. Extra lighting was just a custom choice for this particular piece. So another thing, make sure all your folders are through, because otherwise they will have their own weird, well, I guess it's not really different with this one. It'll have some weird ways of blending that you didn't originally intend. Okay, so the other thing is I took the copy of the entire art that includes the background and I blurred it, so you can see there. I blurred it a lot and kind of reduced it down so it's subtle, it's there, but kind of makes a bit more of a defocus slight. It's kind of like that anime screenshot effect, because that's what it does. Excuse me. The other thing is that from a tutorial I saw by MLeth, you take let me just show the actual version. So using levels, which is a layer correction, it'd be under, there it is, level correction. And then here it is. It's kind of empty right now, but basically crush the blacks, make the blacks much darker, make the whites much brighter, and kind of determine how much of the in-between you want to preserve. The purpose of this is to get the bright parts to be all kind of glowy. That's what this is all about. As you can see, it gets a bit more glowy. So like her face and the butterfly and even these areas, they have a bit of a glow. And the other step to that, once you've level corrected, is blur as well, just like this one. These two are kind of the same, except this one has an extra step for it. So there's that. There is pretty much the finished piece. There's also the vignette, which will just darken the corners. Kind of gives it more of like, when you look at with your eyes, you don't exactly see the corners of your eye of what you see in full lit as you can in the middle. There's a bit of a darkish in the corners. I'm bad at explaining this. Another thing, I'm going to take these off for a moment. I had an alternative version, which you may or may not have seen. It was on Patreon, but here is the alternate version, and you can see she's kind of got that on her mouth. It was kind of a process to get this done, but I just had to copy the way I shaded. Copied everything that I did on her mouth, for one thing. And she also has her scarf as a kind of a rag. It's kind of an inside joke, which you can probably read about it more on Patreon. But here's her rag being soaked in whatever, and then just some extra shading to that. And then, yeah, again, it's basically the same tints that you saw before, also applied to the scarf too. Extra lighting as well. It actually just applies to the scarf at this point, because there was nothing on her mouth in the other one. And then light wrap of its own, and then the same overall blur and overall glow as you see here. So basically, when I'm switching between alternative version and the real version, I have to disable and re-enable these two for this one. But yeah, there you have it. And that is the process that I went through to make this, pretty much. I don't remember. I think I made the background. Yeah, I made the background after I shaded LyDia for this one. But I'm kind of playing around with the order of things too, making sure I get the lighting as accurate as possible. But yeah, and there's my subtle signature down here. Annie drew it. My name's not Annie. Thanks for watching.